Okay, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the history of photography. First of all, where does the word photography come from? Well, it's a Greek word. It actually comes from two Greek words, photos meaning light and graph meaning drawing or writing. So basically, photography is just writing with light. So if you have no light, then there really isn't photography. The very first attempt at photography was way back in 400 BC in China, and it was a device called a camera obscura. And basically, what that is, it's either like a box or a room or something that is completely 100% dark, except for a single tiny opening. And the opening leads to the outside, and so it lets in a really little beam of light, which as it goes through the small opening, it projects then really, really large on the opposite wall, whatever is outside. It actually projects it upside down though. Um, People then would take a pencil or whatever writing utensil they had and they would trace the image. And so that was the very first attempt at photography, a camera obscura. And notice this is an enclosed box, completely dark except for this little hole here. And then this image is projected through the hole and it comes up upside down. And this gentleman is then tracing it. That's a camera obscura. Here's a little device that shows you the same thing. And this is National Geographic's little video on how they actually created their own room with a view. So they made their own camera obscura, and we'll watch this together in class. Okay, Joseph Niepce, he was the first gentleman to actually record images on a surface. He figured out how to do that, but he couldn't figure out how to make the images stay. So they would fade away over time. He did this through a bunch of different chemical compositions. He actually, the first known photograph was called View from the Window at Le Gras, and it was way back in 1825, and the exposure time was 8 hours, and there's an example of it. So the exposure, it was wide open like this for 8 hours, and then that's the image he got. Now again, he really had a hard time keeping that from fading away. So eventually he found Louis Daguerre, can't say his name ever, Louis Daguerre, and actually it's Daguerre, and they worked together to develop the daguerreotype process. Now this worked a lot quicker, and it only took several minutes to record an image. If he was taking a picture of a person or people, they had to hold perfectly still for several minutes. And that's why a lot of those old pictures, the people aren't smiling because they had to just stand there and stare for so long. And the actual first picture of a human being was kind of by accident. It happened to be this shoe shiner was shining this guy's shoes. And throughout this exposure time of 10 minutes, other people would come and go, but this guy stayed the whole time, so he was captured on the film. So the first known photo of a person was by Louis Daguerre, and it was Boulevard du Temple. The exposure time was 10 minutes. This is an example of a daguerreotype process. And again, we'll watch a short movie in class that kind of explains this process a little better. Robert Cornelius. He was the one who took the first known portrait of a person, and it happened to be of himself. So he actually had the first selfie back in the 1800s. So Robert Cornelius, first known portrait of a person. Okay, up until now, we really didn't have paper-based film at all, but a guy by the name of George Eastman, he invented some paper-based film, and he patented the first camera that used paper-based film, and it was called the Kodak Brownie. Here's an example of it, and I actually have one of these we can pass around in class. Mine's not quite as old as that one. The thing that was cool about the Kodak Brownie, first of all, it was the first mass-marketed camera. Now, anyone could take a picture. they sold for $1 or $2. Your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your teacher could buy a camera now and actually take pictures. And their motto was, you push the button, we do the rest. And what they meant was, you take the picture and we'll do everything else. The film came preloaded in this camera. And here, there's advertising one for $1 right here. And so it came preloaded with film. You would take the 6 exposures, it looks like, so 6 pictures, and then you would send the whole camera back to Kodak. They would take the film out, develop it, and put a new roll of film in. And they would also return your pictures there. So that's how the Kodak Brownie worked. In 1934, they introduced 35 millimeter film, which was popular for years and years and years and years and years. I used this film when I first started photography, or when I took pictures as a young adult, or even in high school. And the thing about this film was you had to load it in complete pitch black, otherwise it would become exposed and it wouldn't do any well. It would not work. This will be a little video we'll watch on how that works together as a class. Now, obviously, there are still some photographers who like to shoot with film, but most people have now gone digital. This kind of explains how those photographs were developed from the negatives in the film process. Again, we'll watch that another day. And then something else that was really, really popular was Kodachrome, and it was our first color film. So up until now, all the film was black and white. But in 1934, Kodak introduced Kodachrome, and that was very, very popular for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, people used Kodachrome for 74 years. Now, towards the end of Kodachrome's lifespan, the only place you could ever even get it developed was Dwayne's Photo in Parsons, Kansas. So in 2010, it was actually discontinued. And it was discontinued because the age of the digital camera was here, and people were mostly going digital, and no one else had the chemicals to develop the film. So we weren't able to develop Kodachrome film anymore. Paul Simon sang a song about Kodachrome. There's a national park named after Kodachrome. It was a very, very, very popular film. We'll listen to Paul's song, and we'll talk a little bit about the history of Kodachrome and the last roll of Kodachrome. We'll do some activities with that. Finally, the first instant camera was developed back in 1948, and it was Polaroid. And these are just examples of all the Polaroid cameras that have, through the years. And I do have another example of one maybe similar to this or so. Anyway, the thing cool about the Polaroid was the film that was inside the camera held all the chemicals together that were needed to develop the film. So when you snapped the picture, the film would roll out of it, and it would push the chemicals together, and it would come out of your camera, and then a picture would appear within about a minute or so. Well, they discontinued this camera in 2008, but it was such a popular camera and everybody wanted it back that they reinstated the Polaroid in 2009, and now they have some really cool Polaroids out on the market today. We have the little cube. It's just like a little tiny camera, about that big, and it does some wide angle action, kind of like a GoPro perhaps. The Socialmatic, it prints a little tiny 2x3-inch photos, and you can share them via Wi-Fi instantly with your Instagram accounts. And these are, that's a little more expensive. Hopefully the price will go down on those. So that's a real quick rundown on the history of photography. I'll make this presentation available to you guys, and we also have some different movies, like I've mentioned before, and videos to watch to further understand the history of photography. So now I got to figure out how to quit screencasting.